Good morning, it's Mike.
Hi, Mike. Ben Fawcett here, Greg Chu, and Adam Rivers. How are you doing?
Just fine. Apologize. I was just wrapping up another call when it first rang in. So.
Oh, no problem. Busy day. Maybe we'll kick right off. I'll get Greg to.
Yeah, maybe sort of standard how we do it. We'll just get you to sort of go through your background, maybe just for the first initial couple minutes.
Sure. Relevant to this discussion, I've been working in the dairy industry since 1996. I was with Kraft for about 16 years, most of the time in dairy purchasing. At some point in supply chain, at some point, had responsibility for buying about every dairy raw material for Kraft in the U.S. and Canada. I'm also involved with the global leadership team for the dairy purchasing. Pretty much my entire time there was responsible for forecasting dairy prices, managing risk, and also involved with policy and industry relations, stuff like that. And in the last 6.5 years or so, I've had my own consulting business and focus pretty much exclusively on dairy and dairy companies and food companies, not only here in the U.S., but I've got clients in Europe and Asia and other spots around the world. So do a lot of work with with companies on feasibility studies and business analysis, risk management, supply chain assessments, product research, things like that. So my background is in economics and markets and supply chain, and it's get to work with lots of different companies. Also do due diligence on projects with companies and private equity and so forth, and looking at different investments in the food and dairy space.
Okay. I guess maybe to get sort of very specific in terms of what we're looking for, just so you can maybe frame your answers, is, we're looking to sort of peg the profitability of Saputo specifically. So, ultimately that's going to boil down to their margins and, I guess, growth potential. So we're looking for sort of the lay of the land in terms of, dairy processors, again, and specific to with regards to the divisions that Saputo would operate in.
Yep.
I'll leave it there, and you can sort of start the discussion.
Just looking at competitive dynamics, I think they've been complaining about it, and just curious to get your thoughts and frame that.
And this is. Do you want to focus on any certain geography or in total?
Maybe U.S. first, then if you have any thoughts on Canada or international.
Yep.
U.S. primarily.
Yeah. So we'll focus on U.S. and they're. They are kind of what they're experiencing, what they're saying is very similar across the cheese industry, maybe even the wider dairy industry here in the U.S. In that the margins have in 2018 have not necessarily been very good. They have been hurt probably for the last year or so on their whey processing and high level. And this is going to probably not make all that much sense to start with, but a number of cheese plants and cheese companies in the U.S., particularly the ones that are making commodity cheese like mozzarella and cheddar like Saputo, largely break even on their cheese operation, which is that's kind of strange. Why would that be? But instead they tend to really the net gain or loss on these plants are driven more by the whey revenue. And companies like Saputo and others like them have made a lot of investments in their whey processing to get more value added out of the whey proteins and whey protein concentrates and isolates. So when those markets are strong, they tend to generate a lot of revenue off their whey operations that are actually greater than what they get from their cheese. In 2018, really starting in probably fourth quarter of 2017, the high protein whey markets have collapsed. So it's really squeezed the margins on their whey processing. So that the revenues on their whey side of their business have really not been there this year, and they get back to the cheese is kind of a very low margin sort of business on its own.
Okay, if you just speak to the whey market maybe.
Sure.
What's going on there and what's
and then the outlook. I talk to and work with a number of cheese companies around the country and their plants. What happened late last year was basically a collapse in the WPC 80 market, which is 80% protein on the whey protein concentrate. And just for perspective, the price had been $2.50, $3 a pound at its high back in 2013, 2014 was up over $4, $4.25 a pound, and that's just printing money basically for those companies. And not surprisingly, that would mean that people would say, "Gee, I'm making a lot of money. I'm going to expand production." So what ended up happening is production did increase for some of those high protein, higher value products, and all of a sudden there was too much on the market, and the market collapsed. So going from $2.50 to $3 a pound, prices on the lowest end was down to $1.25, $1.50, $1.75 last fall and into this year. And for a lot of this year, the prices have been around $1.60 to $1.80. So a lot less revenue being generated, and then the actual margin on that product, the dry whey price drives the raw material cost in the milk for making these different whey products. And there's been it's called a misalignment. So probably the best way to say it, a misalignment in the pricing of the raw material in the milk, driven by the dry whey price in relation to the higher value added or higher protein wheys. And just as a quick example, if dry whey is 11, 12, 13% protein, and WPC80 is 80% protein, just the simple math would say that the WPC80 price should be 7 times higher than the dry whey price on a protein basis. This year, it's been more like 4 or 5 times. So, and that difference is significant in terms of the dry whey price being 40 cents, 45 cents a pound. You'd use that simple multiple on a protein equivalent. WPC80 should be $3 a pound, but it's been more like $1.60, $1.80. Now it's a little over $2 and going higher, but that's been a lot of money lost at those manufacturers because of the misalignment in the whey pricing.
And as far as the input on the milk pricing in the U.S., where has that been? Has that been steady during this process, or has it fluctuated?
The actual milk cost, total milk cost, has been relatively steady. It's increased from the first part of the year. It dropped in July when the tariff news came out from Mexico and China, and it dropped again here in the last month or so. But the relevant piece of the milk that drives the raw material for the whey manufacturing is driven by the dry whey price, which has gone from it's nearly doubled over the course of this year. It was down in 20-some cents a pound to where, this past week it's up to about 47 cents a pound.
I was just going to ask, maybe if you could expand on sort of the competitive pressures a little bit more, and just in terms of, you mentioned a lot of capacity was opened up, when the prices were high. Are any of the sort of maybe less efficient plants on the verge of closing, or any of them getting squeezed to the point of sort of bringing that production capacity offline?
No. Short answer is no. These cheese plants, the companies, a majority of the cheese plants in the United States are owned by private companies. You do have examples of Saputo and Agripure from Canada, but a lot of them, particularly the major plants, are Glanbia, Leprino. I already mentioned, Agripure, Saputo. There's, several other kind of major, Lactalis is big in mozzarella. In addition to them, some of the farmer-owned cooperative plants. And their plants have been around for decades, and when somebody makes an investment, it is really the long game. So they're used to having a bad year or a bad couple of years. They know at some point things will get better and they'll recover. However, there were two plants owned by the same company that Saputo just bought, I think about 2 weeks ago, F&A cheese in New Mexico and Wisconsin. I think part of that was, or maybe a large part, typically when we see these plants, as cheese companies sell, is when there's a generational turnover. And I think that was the case of F&A. I know they've been, back in the spring, I knew they were for sale. And Saputo's been very aggressive buying up stuff here in the U.S. in addition to other places. But they're really, and so instead of plants closing, there's actually a Valley Queen cheese in South Dakota is expanding right now, and there's a big expansion happening in South Dakota with Agripure's plant. They're tripling the size of that plant. They're going to make an additional 600,000 pounds of cheese per day when that